What I've got here is just a quick thinner comparison, and what I did was I put down a drop of odorless mineral spirits or odorless paint thinner. I put down a drop of Tester's enamel thinner, and I put down a drop of garden variety lacquer thinner from Home Depot. Then I put a drop of Tester's flat black in each pool, and then I took a Q-tip, a clean Q-tip for each, and I made sure I didn't contaminate, and also made sure I didn't contaminate when I was putting down the thinners, and just kind of switched them around. Now you'll notice a difference in tonality here. That's just because I swabbed up a little more with the Q-tip. There really wasn't much difference between the mix here, but that's the reason you're seeing a darker tonality here. It was more because I swabbed up more with the Q-tip when I was mixing them. But as you can see, there's a difference here. This is that odorless mineral spirits, which I have to apologize because I think I recommended this to a couple people to try this, and the reason I did is because I had been using just regular old mineral spirits in the past, and I didn't notice too much trouble with it breaking up like that, mainly because I used to use these paint trays and mix my stuff in there, and I couldn't, you couldn't really see down in there and notice much breakup, or I didn't. But I did notice, thinking back now, I did notice that I was having variable results because I was switching around with thinners and stuff when I was painting things. I just grabbed what was the closest. Sometimes I put some lacquer thinner in it. I'd put some mineral spirits in sometimes. Sometimes I'd put a little bit of airbrush thinner or whatever. Wasn't really paying much attention. But after I started doing a lot more brushing and playing around, I did just want to show the difference here. Now, the difference between these two, they mixed fine, but the lacquer thinner version dried much faster than the enamel thinner version. And this dried in like just a matter of a couple minutes. I won't say dried, but it was completely flat and devoid of thinner, just in a couple of minutes. Now this took more like 5 minutes or so, maybe 5 to 6 minutes to dry to that same point. And I think that's beneficial for brush painting, especially on larger objects, seats, interiors, things like that. I think it's important to have that extra time to allow the paint to continue the flow as you're painting, and maybe kind of going over, re-over some spots and things. This here is going to give you very little working time using lacquer thinner. Although it thins fine, I think this is far more beneficial to have that extra working time when you're brushing. Now, as far as airbrushing, we already know that lacquer thinner works great. The Don Yost method has proven itself many times, so I'd recommend either for airbrushing, to be honest, but this is going to be more expensive because, it's smaller bottles. But for brush purposes, I use the airbrush version of it. You can get the actual brush enamel thinner for brushing. I just use this for brushing, and it goes a long, long way. So it's not, cost prohibitive to buy these little bottles if you're just using it to thin enamels for brushing. Now lacquer thinner, obviously, in spray painting and airbrushing bodies and stuff, you're going to go through a lot more thinner. More economical just to go ahead and buy the garden variety lacquer thinner. Thinner is important, and even though it may look like it mixes well, the drying time might become a factor depending on what you're painting. So my personal preference from now on, and what I will always stick with for as far as these Tester's enamels when it comes to brushing, is the Tester's enamel thinner. They got something in it that lets it dry or stay wet longer and flow longer, and that's what I would personally recommend and use myself from here on out. In this well right here, I have the black Tester's enamel with a little bit of the Tester's enamel thinner. I have it mixed up in the brush, just all in that brush. Okay. I'm going to pretend that I just finished painting. There's my brush with the paint in it. I'm going to let that kind of start to set just a little bit. Just to mimic, painting, and the brush is starting to, the paint's starting to thicken in the brush, or I've just finished, and I'm going to let that start to dry just a little bit. I have a well here that has mineral spirits. I have a well here that has a lacquer thinner. And then I have a well here that has the enamel thinner that I use to thin the paint with itself. I'm going to dip this in the mineral spirits. And as expected, it's not dissolving that paint. I've cleaned the brush, thoroughly cleaned it. I went back in to some more of the enamel with the Tester's enamel thinner. I got it all in the brush. I let it sit to where it started getting a little sticky. Now I'm going to go into the lacquer thinner. Same thing. It's not cutting it without going back through and cleaning the brush and doing all this and that. I'm going to go into the enamel thinner that I thinned this paint with. And there you go. It's getting the paint out. It's breaking up the paint and getting it out. Thoroughly cleaned the brush. I put some lacquer thinner in with the enamel, and it mixed up just fine. I loaded the brush. You know, as you can see, it's, you know, nice and homogenized. I let the brush sit there for a little bit and kind of just start getting a little sticky. In this well right here, I have that same lacquer thinner that I mixed with my enamel. And let's see what happens. I'm not a chemist. I can't really explain what's going on. Really don't understand it. But I know this much. I'm a big proponent of using the thinner that that is recommended by the manufacturer. You know, when I buy Tester's enamel thinners, they make a thinner for that paint. You know, I can go back into the enamel thinner. Oh, and it's cleaning it right out. Now, I don't know if they do this on purpose. I don't know if this is a proprietary thing. But as you can see, I avoided the enamel thinner from Tester's and used this regular lacquer thinner. It mixed fine and brushed okay. But once it started to just set up just a tiny bit, it no longer was penetrated by the lacquer thinner. Just plain old Home Depot lacquer thinner. So the point of this is, and I've said this a million times before, there's no reason to really try to, I don't know, some people, including myself, are like trying to cheat the system. Why would you spend that much on this little bottle when you can buy a whole gallon for a little bit more? Well, this is the reason. I try to cheat the system. Okay, this bottle costs $3-4 or whatever. You know, it's funny. You know, it mixes fine. It brushes okay, to a point. And once you hit about that 2-minute point, it starts getting granular, sticky. It's you know, and then your paintbrush job is going downhill. And as you can see, this is no trickery. I took straight enamel Tester's paint, straight up lacquer thinner from Home Depot. This is the Crown lacquer thinner that you can buy. Yeah, it mixed fine. But then when I went to clean my brush, something weird is happening again. But then I go back to the enamel thinner from Tester's, and it took it all out of my brush and cleaned it out. You know, it homogenized and didn't turn to granular mess. If I bought a gallon of thinner just for using with enamel paints, and this is the results I'm getting, I've wasted my money. You know, for some reason, when you're putting a large quantity of this into an airbrush with paint and spraying it, well, it's no big deal. You know, it's a totally different situation. It's not starting to get sticky in the airbrush, but on your actual paintbrush, once this stuff starts to set, something changes. So there you go. Take it for what it's worth. You know, I just wanted to show something. You know, that saving money is not necessarily always going to work out to your benefit. You know, I take everything on the internet with a grain of salt. I mean, some things are obvious, you know, and great advice and a lot of good information. But there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of people who, like me, are stubborn types that are like, oh, heck, you don't need to buy this and or spend on that. And, You know, sometimes you may need to do that for the best results. If you're going to spend the money, try to get, you know, what's going to work, and you know is going to work, and it's always going to work, and it's always going to work the same, and it's going to give you the best results for your money. So thanks for watching.